You're sitting at your desk, staring at a textbook. One subject, total silence, full focus, and you still can't absorb it. A fighter pilot at 1,500 miles per hour is managing radar, radio chatter, altitude, weapon systems, threat vectors, and wingman positions simultaneously, in real time, while someone is actively trying to kill him, and he makes zero mistakes. You can't get through a chapter without checking your phone. He's not smarter than you. His brain is the same 3-pound blob of fat as yours, but his brain runs a different operating system. A system so precise, so ruthless in how it filters and prioritizes information, that it makes your studying look like a child banging crayons on a wall. Top Gun didn't teach him to be a genius. It taught him a cognitive architecture, a system for processing reality faster than reality is happening. I reverse-engineered the whole thing. Interviews, declassified military training manuals, peer-reviewed cognitive science. It breaks down into 4 methods. By the end of this, you will process information faster, retain it longer, and make better decisions under pressure than 99% of the people around you. Let's go. Chapter 1. The OODA kill switch. Most people think focus means staring harder at one thing. Wrong. That's not focus. That's tunnel vision. And tunnel vision gets fighter pilots killed. In 1960, Air Force Colonel John Boyd was undefeated in aerial combat. No one could beat him. He had a standing bet. Give him any opponent, any aircraft advantage, and he'd have them defeated within 40 seconds. He never lost. He wasn't faster. He wasn't physically stronger. He was cycling through decisions faster than his opponents could process what was happening. He called it the OODA Loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Every human being runs this loop constantly. You see something, you interpret it, you choose a response, you act on it. Most people run this loop slowly. They observe everything equally, get overwhelmed, overthink the decision, and act too late. Or they never act at all. Boyd's insight was this: the pilot who collapses the loop wins. Observe less, but observe what matters. Orient instantly because you've pre-built your mental models. Decide in milliseconds because your training already made the decision for you. Act immediately. The average person observes everything. That's the problem. You walk into a study session, and your brain tries to process all of it. The room temperature, your hunger, the notification you just got, the chapter you're supposed to read, the other 5 things you have to do today. Your brain is stuck in observe. It never gets to decide or act. You call this being overwhelmed. Boyd called it OODA Loop collapse. Here's the fix. Pre-observe. Before you sit down to study, do learn. Do anything requiring real cognitive output. Run a 90-second threat assessment. What are the 3 things that are most likely to interrupt me? Phone, noise, low energy? Eliminate them before you start. Now your brain isn't spending cognitive bandwidth observing threats. It already handled them. The loop collapses faster. You move straight to orient. Most people walk into a study session with 11 open loops. A fighter pilot closes every loop before takeoff, not during flight. Before. Close your loops before you start. But here's the problem, though. Collapsing the OODA loop only helps you react faster. That's not enough. Reacting faster to wrong information is still wrong. You need to orient correctly. That's the hardest part. And that's what Chapter 2 is about. Chapter 2. Situational Compression. Most people think information is the point. Study more, absorb more, know more. Wrong. Information is not the point. Orientation is the point. A fighter pilot at 1,500 miles per hour doesn't have time to think about raw data. He doesn't process individual instruments. He reads the entire situation as one compressed picture. Cockpit, sky, radar, radio, threat vector, fuel, wingman. One mental snapshot. One decision. Cognitive scientists at Ohio State University studied expert pilots versus novices. Novice pilots looked at instruments individually. Expert pilots chunked the entire cockpit into patterns. They didn't see altitude, speed, heading as 3 separate numbers. They saw one story: situation normal or situation critical. Your brain has a working memory bottleneck. George Miller at Princeton proved this in 1956. You can hold approximately 7 items in working memory at once. 7. That's it. The average textbook chapter throws 40 concepts at you simultaneously. You hit the bottleneck immediately. Your brain starts dropping things. You call it bad memory. It's not. It's just overflow. Experts don't have a bigger working memory. They have fewer items in it. They compress. Here's how. Every time you learn something new, your first job is not to remember the details. Your first job is to find the pattern. What is the skeleton of this information? What is the one sentence that explains everything else? Example: biochemistry. Krebs cycle. Most students memorize every enzyme, every intermediate molecule, every step. 12 steps, 12 chemical names, 12 arrows. Useless. Expert understanding. The Krebs cycle is how your cell converts food into usable energy by stripping off carbon dioxide and passing electrons down a chain. That's it. One sentence. Every other detail hangs off that sentence like ornaments on a tree, but you need the tree first. Most people try to memorize ornaments with no tree. Wonder why everything falls off. Build the skeleton. One sentence that captures the core mechanism, then add detail to the skeleton. Never the other way around. Pilots call this the mental model. Before any mission, they run the whole flight in their head. Not every instrument reading. The shape of the mission. Takeoff, climb, threat sector, engagement, egress, landing. 5 nodes. Everything else is detail inside the nodes. When the mission starts going wrong, and it always does, they don't panic. They reread the shape. Find which node they're in. Apply the relevant decision tree. Done. No cognitive collapse. Your mental model for any subject you're studying should be so simple, you could draw it on a napkin in 30 seconds. If you can't, you don't understand it yet. You've just memorized it. And memorized things fall out of your brain the moment stress hits. Understand the shape, then memorize the details. Hit subscribe before you forget the shape of this video. We build better mental models here. But here's the problem, though. You now have a faster loop. You have a compressed mental model. You still have a forgetting problem. You study today. You forget tomorrow. You forget anyway. Chapter 3 fixes that permanently. Chapter 3. Stress Inoculation Encoding. Most people think stress is the enemy of learning. Wrong. Completely wrong. That is the most damaging myth in education, and it is killing your ability to retain anything. Robert Sapolsky at Stanford, one of the most respected neurobiologists alive. His research shows that moderate acute stress, the kind you feel during a test, a cold call, a difficult conversation, triggers a hormonal cascade that forces your hippocampus to flag the incoming information as survival critical. It locks it in permanently. The problem isn't stress. The problem is chronic stress. Deadlines, sleep deprivation, social anxiety. Chronic stress destroys memory consolidation. But acute stress? Short burst, high intensity, immediate resolution. That's your brain's natural record button. Fighter pilots train in simulators that are deliberately designed to fail. Engine failure, communication blackout, weapons malfunction. Simultaneously, on purpose, not to torture the pilots, to trigger the stress encoding system so that when the real emergency happens, their brain already has the memory, already ran the pattern, already knows the answer. The brain cannot tell the difference between a highly realistic simulation and reality. Bjork at UCLA proved this. Desirable difficulty. When retrieval feels hard, when it feels like your brain is sweating, that is the learning happening. When studying feels easy, nothing is being encoded. You're just reading the room. Most students study in comfortable conditions. Familiar desk, familiar environment, familiar material. Reviewing notes they already understand. Your brain looks at that and says, "I've seen this before, not important." Delete. Here's the fix. Test yourself before you feel ready. Close the book. Open a blank page. Write everything you know. Feel the panic. That's the record button activating. You will forget things. Good. Write down what you forgot. That's your brain telling you exactly what it hasn't encoded yet. Go back and study just that. Test again. This is what fighter pilots call chair flying. Before they ever get in the jet, they sit in a chair and fly the entire mission in their head. Engine out on takeoff. What do I do? Radios fail at cruise. What do I do? Threat appears at 6 o'clock. What do I do? They stress inoculate in advance. So the real event isn't the first time their brain runs the scenario. It's the 10th, the 100th. Your version. Before any important test, presentation, interview, or performance. Simulate the worst case. What if the first question is something I don't know? What if I blank on the third point? Run the failure scenario. Let your brain panic in rehearsal. Resolve it. Now your brain has the answer encoded. Stress inoculated. Research from the University of Chicago by Sion Bylock shows that students who wrote about their test anxiety for 10 minutes right before a high-stakes exam outperformed students who didn't by significant margins. Why? Because they externalized the stress loop. Closed it. Freed up working memory for actual performance. Panic on paper, so you don't panic on stage. But here's the problem, though. You can learn faster. You can retain better. You can perform under pressure. But if you run out of cognitive fuel midway through, none of it matters. That's the final piece. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Cognitive load management. Most people think effort equals output. Work harder. Think longer. Push through the fatigue. Wrong. That is a broken equation, and it explains why most people plateau and never improve. Here is what's actually happening in your brain when you feel mentally exhausted. You are not running out of brain power. You are running out of glucose in the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is your executive function center. Decision-making, focus, impulse control. It is the most metabolically expensive real estate in your skull. It burns through fuel fast. Fighter pilot training schedules are built around this biological reality. No training block runs longer than 90 minutes without a physical break. Not because the military is soft. Because the research is unambiguous. Peretz Lavi at the Technion Institute in Israel studied natural alertness cycles and found that human cognitive performance peaks and valleys in roughly 90-minute ultradian rhythms. After 90 minutes of sustained mental output, performance degrades whether you feel tired or not. You feel fine. Your prefrontal cortex is drunk. Most students sit for 3, 4, 5 hours and wonder why nothing is sticking after hour 2. It's not discipline that's missing. It's biology. You are studying with a functionally impaired brain and wondering why you're getting impaired results. The fix is structured, not complicated. 90-minute maximum work blocks, non-negotiable. Then a genuine physical break, not scrolling. Not switching to a different screen. Physical. Walk outside. 10 jumping jacks. Cold water on your face, something that drops your cortisol and moves blood. Then return. But here's the part most people miss. Not all 90 minutes are equal. The first 20 minutes of any work block are your ramp-up phase. Your brain is still loading the context. Don't do your hardest work then. Start with something slightly below your peak difficulty. A review, an outline, a warm-up problem. Let the context load. Minutes 20 to 70 are your peak window. This is when you do the hardest, most cognitively demanding work. New material, complex problems, active recall, maximum output. Minutes 70 to 90 are your consolidation window. Start wrapping up. Summarize what you just learned. Write the one-sentence skeleton. Schedule your next review. This is when your brain moves short-term encoding to medium-term storage. Don't skip this window to squeeze in more new content. You're just overriding consolidation with more input. Net result, worse retention. Pilots call this the brief and debrief structure. Every mission has a pre-brief. Every mission has a debrief. The brief is the ramp-up. The mission is the peak window. The debrief is the consolidation. Non-negotiable. Skip the debrief and the lesson evaporates. Anders Ericsson, the researcher who spent 30 years studying elite performers in every field, musicians, surgeons, athletes, chess grandmasters, found one consistent limiting factor across all domains. Not talent, not intelligence, not access to resources. Cognitive recovery. The best performers in the world recover faster and more completely between sessions than average performers. That's the edge, not how hard they push, how completely they recover. Your studying doesn't end when you close the book. It ends when your brain has fully processed what you gave it. Sleep is the final consolidation phase. Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley has shown that during deep, slow-wave sleep, your hippocampus replays the day's learning and transfers it into cortical long-term storage. If you pull an all-nighter before an exam, you are not just tired. You have surgically removed the save button from your learning session. Everything from the last 24 to 48 hours is in RAM with no backup. Volatile. Gone. Surgeons who work 24-hour shifts make 36% more medical errors than surgeons who sleep on a regular schedule. 36%. Your brain on sleep deprivation is not your brain. It is a liability wearing your face. Sleep 7 to 8 hours. Let the system run the save function. Show up tomorrow with the material permanently encoded. That is not laziness. That is the job. Here's the problem, though. You now have the full system. OODA Loop collapse for faster processing. Situational compression for mental model building. Stress inoculation encoding for permanent retention. Cognitive load management for sustained peak performance. But here's the thing. All 4 of these methods depend on one thing: your ability to identify the right 20% of information worth running through this system in the first place. Fast processing of useless material is still useless. Better encoded garbage is still garbage. A more efficient OODA loop pointed at the wrong target is just a faster way to fail. Most people take these methods, apply them with full effort and discipline, and still get mediocre results. Because they're optimizing the engine while driving in the wrong direction. The crucial 20%, the minimum viable signal, the exact information that gives you 80% of the results. That's what separates the people who use these methods and plateau from the people who use them and become genuinely dangerous. That's why I made this video breaking down exactly how to find the crucial 20% in any subject and learn it so fast, it's almost unfair. Watch it next.